Ooh. Ah! Aloha. So today I'm going to be starting work on a World War II trench knife. It's going to be Hawaiian styled, obviously. So the material I'm going to be using is Hawaiian coal wood, swordfish bill, shark teeth, and a deer antler. So what I'm doing first is I'm just going to be drawing out the rough layout of the knuckle duster side of the trench knife. I started to freehand it and that wasn't working. So I just grabbed some string and used that to help get a crisp edge. And then after that I'm just freehanding the general design. First thing I'm doing is I'm going to be shaping this out just a little bit, and then I'm going to be working on the bill. So the bill is a dried bill. A lot of times what I end up needing to do with these bills is I'll drill out the center of the core, and from there I'll then fill the bill with an epoxy. So the epoxy that I like to use is not any brand specifically. I just like a slow setting, low viscous epoxy. I found that if I use an epoxy that is too thick, it just won't fill correctly. What you're seeing me do here is I'm wrapping the entire thing in just painter's tape. I do this to kind of seal it. This way the epoxy doesn't seep through the cracks. This is an older bill, especially on older bills where it's had more time to dry, and I'll have a lot of micro cracks, and this really low viscous epoxy will just seep right through. And so this helps keep that shape. And you'll see as I go to take off the tape here that there wasn't any real bulging or shape deformation. It kind of just kept the same shape. So you can see the bill, because I wrapped it like that, there was some seepage through all those fine pores on the epoxy, but the painter's tape helps it keep formed. And so it just makes it a lot easier after the fact to sand it down and clean it up. So I'm going to be cleaning off that epoxy. I'm going to straighten up this edge here a little bit, and then I'm going to just take it with a grinder, bring that epoxy down so I get back down to the bill. The purpose of the epoxy is really just to seal the bill, so it gives it a better structure. I noticed a really large crack in my bill. And so what I'm doing here is I'm trying to clean out the facing side of that crack. There's going to be epoxy inside of there, and that's not a problem. I'm just trying to clean out this front section. And then what I'm going to do next is going to do kind of like a spot epoxy drop. Really what I mean by that is I'm not going to epoxy the entire thing again, obviously. I'm just going to epoxy this one section. I just want to try to keep it as clean as I can, so that it's less work I have to do later. And I'm using the same epoxy, so it's just really low viscosity. It kind of just seeps right in. And then I hit it with the heat gun. Some of this epoxy is going to be visible, and so I want to make sure I get out as many bubbles as I can. And then I'll just let this sit overnight. So it's taken 2 days to get this bill going, just because the first day I had to fill it, and the second day I had to fix this one section of it. So kind of a pain on that, but I have that tape taken off now, and you can see that epoxy filled nice. Now I'm just cleaning it up, and I'm going to get ready for the remainder of the shaping. Drilling out the center of this and getting it ready to clean it up. I noticed it was a lot more interesting when I did it in reverse, so enjoy. Now that I have the basic layout of it shaped out, I'm going to be cutting in this back edge. So on the World War II trench knife, I noticed on all the images that I looked at, they were a full tang knife. And so what that means is the metal from the blade goes all the way through the handle. So it's a full tang. My bill here isn't quite large enough for it to be a full tang, and I'm going to be using a deer antler as a pommel. So I'm not going to have it go the full duration, but I do want it to go a large portion of the duration. However, my bill is wider than my handle. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cutting in my bill, and then I'm going to inset that bill into the koa. I do want that inset to be really close, really tight tolerances, just so that it doesn't have any horizontal play. I am going to be epoxying it, but the less epoxy I can use, the better. I kind of like it. It looks a little bit cleaner. First thing I did is I just used that little hand sawage to cut it out, or that power sawage to cut it out, but that only went down about 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/2 an inch, and so it didn't go down very deep. And so the rest of it I'm going to be using my 1/4 inch chisel, which happened to be the perfect width. And I'm just going to be going down little by little, checking it, making sure everything is fitting nice and snug. I am going to be epoxying this in, but just like a real knife, I wanted to put in some pegs, so there's a mechanical hole as well. So these are just some wooden dowels that I'm going to use to peg this into place. I kind of like the end grain on the wood when it gets oiled better than using like a brass or metal. It just kind of matches, I think, a little bit better with the rest of the piece. First thing I did is just cut these out so I have these to length. You'll notice I haven't really done any fine shaping after the initial cut. I'm going to be putting in this piece first, and I'm kind of putting all the components together first, just so that I make sure I keep everything in line. It can be a little bit of a challenge sometimes to make sure everything is staying straight in line if you don't have it there to check against. And so here I am just getting some epoxy, putting on both ends. I'm going to slide that into place, let it sit overnight, and then I'll drill my holes for my pegs, get them into place, and start shaping. So I went ahead and prepped the bull shark teeth that I'm going to be using. These are 1-inch bull. I I really like the bull shark, and they fit really well in the style of piece. They're not going to be going in yet. I just wanted to get them ready, just so that I could keep track of the general size and shape of the piece as I started to do more fine shaping on it. The next step is I'm going to be putting in the pommel end. So this is actually a leftover piece of reindeer antler that I had, and it happened to be the perfect size. And so all I'm going to be doing here is I drew the outline of the base of that antler deer, and I'm going to be carving that out so I can inset the piece into it. I'm going to try to go down about, 3/4 of an inch, maybe 5/8 inch. The wooden peg that I'm going to use is a 1/4 inch peg, and so I need to go down just far enough so that I can get that peg into place without, breaking out the top of the wood or anything like that. So I've got the general shaping done, and I'm going to be sanding. I think I've mentioned this before, but I go through a ton of sanding discs. I just don't keep them that long. I've just learned over the years that I end up spending a lot less time if I just swap it out as soon as I start noticing that it's no longer biting. And you can really get a feel for that the more you do it. It's just, you spend a lot more money and time trying to get every ounce out of the sanding disc than you would have ever just grabbing a new sanding disc. And so I'm constantly grabbing new sanding discs. Obviously I try not to go through a whole bag of them for just one piece, but I have had pieces where I've gone through probably 20 or 30 sanding discs of each grit pretty easily on larger pieces. I will be using a little bit of epoxy to first set the teeth. I do this on almost all of my pieces. I do that just to make it a little bit easier to drill out the teeth and then for lashing. I don't have to, and obviously traditionally in Hawaii they didn't put in epoxy. In other places they did actually have a natural epoxy that they would use for a lot of different things, but in Hawaii they didn't. I do it just to speed things up a little bit. The lashing is the primary holding mechanical system there, and it actually does a really good job. I've never had a tooth rip out of the lashing. So I got everything in place and ready to lash. You can't really see it, but on the ground I sweep and I clean everything up when I go to lash, because the lashing is waxed. And as I went through, I noticed that one of the holes that I tapped didn't go all the way through. Actually, I think I just missed it. So you can see the start of that hole there and nothing there. That was annoying. But I got that tapped real quick, cleaned it up, and went on to lashing. So I have to apologize. I got too excited and I went to oil up the piece and I totally forgot to hit record. And I finished oiling it and I went to hit stop and I noticed that when I hit stop, it hit record. I was like, oh crap. So there's no recording of the oiling, but we got some good footage of the finished piece. Here you go.